Well, we're now ending the second week of this federal election campaign, and for a check-in, we're now joined by the bureau chiefs. Bob Fife, the Ottawa bureau chief for the Globe and Mail; Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa bureau chief for the Toronto Star; Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa bureau chief for La Presse. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Michael.
Glad to be here.
So here we are, as I said, week two, just about to wrap up. We're about a third of the way into this campaign, and Donald Trump appears twice in as many weeks as this has run. So talk to us overall about how Donald Trump's involvement, and so visibly so, has affected the campaign.
Well, just look at the polls. I mean, the Liberals have a 10-point lead over the Conservatives now, and Mr. Mark Carney's preference over Pierre Poilievre is 20% lead. That is astounding change from before Justin Trudeau resigned, when the Conservatives had a 20% lead over the Liberals. And then after Mr. Trudeau left, a lot of the poison came out of the system, and then along comes Donald Trump with his tariffs threats, and it just changed everything for the Liberals. And look, we know that this next week is going to be an important week for Mr. Poilievre. He needs to be able to figure a way to come back. And then we go into the debates. But after the debates, if he cannot hit a home run in the debates, we've got 1 week left. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and it's been largely driven by Canadians' fear of Donald Trump and the tariffs and, God knows, likely recession if the America goes into a recession. And the feeling that Mr. Carney, because he's a two-time Bank of Canada governor, both here in Canada and England, is more qualified for the job. And that's a struggle for Mr. Poilievre.
Well, let's pick up on that. You know, Bob talks about how Donald Trump has lifted the Liberal vote, but, you know, when you talk about the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc, they are now all struggling up against the fact that Donald Trump will not go away in terms of this campaign.
And in fact, I noticed a distinct change in tone by Mr. Poilievre this week. The Trump tariff threats have forced his campaign to modify a bunch of things. First of all, there's a tonal shift. Second of all, there's been some specific campaign pledges rolled out to address the Trump threats. Everything from, you know, quick capital gains tax deferrals, business loan program. And you heard him on the day that Carney unveiled Canada's counter tariffs. Mr. Poilievre finally conceded the point that Carney's been making, that the days of a deepening trade commercial relationship with the U.S. are over. And Mr. Poilievre finally on Thursday, for the first time, said, up until yesterday, I, like many Canadians, thought it was still possible, but that's no longer the case. So he has switched both in tone and policy, and even the art on his podium has changed. He's no longer having slogans on his podium. He's got a big maple leaf on his podium, and he's trying to put forward a more prime ministerial look. So Trump has changed not just the Liberal sort of buoyancy, but it's changed, I think, what was a 2-year campaign plan that the Conservatives had been working up, changed it now as they go, as they're going through this thing. They're moving and shifting on a dime.
The federal election is actually an audition for who will become prime minister with Canadians. Canadians are basically conducting the interviews with different candidates, and so far, I made the calculation. The first 12 days, Mr. Carney spent 4 days being prime minister because he had to respond to Mr. Trump. So people see that he's actually a prime minister who can make decisions, announce big things in retaliation against the U.S. administration. So it leaves the contest unfair for the rest of the leaders.
I mean, arguably, Mr. Poilievre was auditioning for the job of opposition leader for those first 11 days until he started to switch gears, which he finally did.
Exactly.
But they won't call it that, though. He's still insisting he is not switching focus. He's not switching focus, but the frame is different.
Absolutely. He has no choice to change the message because the ballot questions remains the big one, Donald Trump, and what do you do with him if you have power? But that leaves little space for marginal parties, if I can call them that way. The Bloc Québécois, who the leader cannot be prime minister, and Mr. Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, who cannot be prime minister as well. So it squeezes them out, and they're trying to squeeze a lemon that is empty of juice right now. There's nothing left for them.
You raise a very good point, because the Conservative vote is actually pretty strong. It's at around 37, 38%. So, and the Liberals are up because why? The NDP vote has gone to the Liberals, and the Bloc
So has
Québécois
the
vote has
Bloc.
gone.
And the Green also. The Green.
yeah.
What was it?
And I would think it's probably some blue Liberals that had business Liberals who had left the Liberal Party because of Mr. Trudeau have also come back. But the Conservative vote is strong, but how can he grow? He's not likely to grow from the NDP or the Bloc Québécois.
Well, and this is what I was going to say, because when you talk about Conservatives at 37, that's actually close to base, right? Like, I mean, in any election, you're
33
counting.
33 is more their base. 33,
exactly.
32, 34 is their base.
Yeah.
They had grown up to 37, I would argue, over the last 2 years. But the problem is their vote efficiency vis-a-vis the Liberal efficiency of a vote, given, you know, their numbers are in the 40s range, they have to be much further ahead to not just form government, to claim the most seats, even to form a minority government.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Bob raises a good point. How do you grow the Conservative base at 37 while you've been slamming, for Mr. Poilievre, you've been slamming the NDP leader for the last year or so, calling Mr. Singh a sellout. So you sort of talk down Mr. Singh and his base. So they're not going to go for you. He did the same thing with the Bloc Québécois. So he didn't build alliances while he was an opposition leader. Now he needs alliances to be able to pursue his final quest and be prime minister. And that's the problem for him now.
Okay, but I do want to ask this question, though, because here you have the Liberals very much in the lead. Mark Carney getting these positive, I guess, reviews from Canadians. But is there a danger that the Liberals and Mark Carney are peaking too early? It's still got, 2/3 of this campaign left, and arguably he has been helped out by Donald Trump because it's given him the opportunity to lead where he's more comfortable in rather than campaigning.
Well, look, I think that's a legitimate point you're raising. Next week is pivotal for the Liberals to be able to maintain that lead. I think it's interesting if you look at his campaign schedule for next week. This is a campaign that's going at targeting NDP and Conservative ridings, including they're going to be in Saskatchewan where they have no seats. So that shows you that they see the tide going in their favor. But you can make a couple of mistakes and it could change. But I think the decisive moment comes for the debates. That's where Canadians, millions of Canadians, will be able to look and say, can this guy, is he good enough? And he probably is not going to be a good debater compared to Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Blanchette, but maybe because he's not a politician, people are going to give him a little bit of slack on that. But if they can't really do harm to him after the debates, it's over.
Yeah, it's over. And as you say, the debate's just about a week and a half, 2 weeks away. Tonda, what do you say?
Yeah,
Is
the
there
debates
danger
are
of
good.
peaking?
The debates are pivotal, but I don't think any of us here have a crystal ball. No one's going to say, yeah, it's done, it's over, the Liberals have won it. Too soon to say that. But there's no question that the tariff drama is playing out in real time, and people south of the border are seeing investment savings evaporate. People are losing in the thousands their jobs in Canada right now. So I don't underestimate the ongoing impact of that on everybody.
And I expect Mr. Trump's shadow to remain large until the end of the campaign, because now the markets are falling. Mr. Trump will have to react to that. Will he come back and reverse his position? That will have an impact on the election campaign. And for the debates, I'd like to come back to the French debate. I don't think this French debate will be as crucial as in the past, for a simple reason. Quebecers have a choice between, for them, Mr. Poilievre, is not very popular with Quebecers. So Quebecers will be looking either Mr. Blanchette or Mr. Carney. Mr. Carney's French is, laborious at times, but they'll be looking at a prime minister, at the prime minister. And Mr. Blanchette cannot be prime minister. So in that French debate, that is a serious handicap for Mr. Blanchette.
Okay, so we're keeping that debate. Before we're done, I also want to talk about Preston Manning because, he a bit eclipsed by Donald Trump, because the day that Donald Trump had his tariff announcement, that's when Mr. Manning wrote an op-ed for your paper, Bob, where he talked about a vote for Carney as a vote for Western separation. What impact does that statement have? Does that statement need to be heeded by Canadians?
Well, first of all, my view of Preston Manning's always been is he's a demagogue. I remember when he first got on the political scene, he was running against French, running against Quebec. And he's always tried to inflame and push people's buttons. And this is what he's doing here again. And I think what he's done is done more harm to Pierre Poilievre than he's done for the Liberals. Having said that, there is that we have to take seriously the sense of Western alienation. Mr. Carney cannot ignore the fact that they feel that they are being targeted all the time, and we worry about the auto sector, but we don't worry about the oil and gas sector. So I don't think we should discount that. I would hope that Mr. Carney is enough of a statesman to understand that you have to recognize that and figure out ways to make sure that Western Canada, which we rely on for their oil and natural gas, which pays for our social programs, are not ignored.
Tonda? Quick.
Yeah, no, there's no question that Mr. Manning, I would say, has been an ideologue all his life. And, you know, I do remember how the Reform Party was an agent fighting against any accommodation of Quebec's interests, constitutional or otherwise, in the past. And so it's kind of, you know, he portrays himself in that piece as the agent of the West wants in and the conciliatory agent, but that is not the role he has played in the past. And I think that, yes, we do have to take note of and trust that political leaders will acknowledge the Western alienation issues right now. But I don't find that what he advanced is the solution to that. To tell Eastern Canada, you know, you can't vote Liberal or else the country's going to break up is just a nonsensical proposition.
The last time I checked, we do live in democracy, and people will make their choice. And if Mr. Manning doesn't like it and would reject the result of a fair election, well, I think he doesn't understand how democracy works, in my sense. And for the first time, I think, in 10 years, you have a Liberal leader who's open to trying to get our resources to Tidewater by opening up a national energy corridor. This was put forward before by the Conservative Party under Andrew Scheer. It is now being adopted by Mr. Carney, and he's trying to convince the premiers, which you need to do if you want it to be successful, the premiers to accept also a national energy corridor. So I would say
First Nations. He's also trying to involve Indigenous communities.
And that's a key point too.
So he's accommodating all the interests. That's the difference between the route Mr. Manning's proposing.
Okay. Well, listen, never enough time, but I appreciate it. Bob, Tonda, Joël-Denis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.